so I'll get through this as quick as we can. I've been asked to talk about how we go about choosing open source software specifically. Actually, it's not much different to choosing any piece of software, and I'm going to be picking up on a lot of what Gordon's been talking about as well. I'm not going to be taking you through a list of all the top open source tools to use. Best place to go for that is Jane Hart's Top 100 Tools. So go there, go to her website, and that will show you what people are already using. But I will be looking at some of the characteristics of open source software in terms of, as we think about how we choose them. And I'll be looking at some of the rules, and I've got 5 rules, not 6 as it says in the synopsis. So that makes it a little bit shorter. All the rules do assume that you've been through the pre-analysis stage that Gordon was talking about. So they've assumed you've got to a position where you know you've got to choose some software. So that's where we're coming from. Now, a question for you. When I say the words open source, what comes to mind? Free. Cool. Straight away. Anything else? Everyone has access? Anything else? Sorry? It can be modified. No vendor hooking.
A community to back it up.
Okay, a community to back it up. Okay, lots of terms that you obviously read about, you heard about them before. How much of that is hype? Open source software will save the world. It will free us from the clutches of that big beast, Microsoft. It won't cost you anything. It's better. Sorry, too low. Didn't read Don's instructions. Don't put things too low in the PowerPoint. Our field is terrible at hype. We're forever reading stuff that has got absolutely no basis, or maybe a tiny basis in objective truth. Now, I'm a former science teacher, and that really winds me up. If you read my blog this week, I was reading one of the magazines, not the conference one for this one, but from another conference, and it was just full of hype. And I can't stand that. I think, where's that come from? Where's the truth in that? But we do it because when we're talking about even choosing software where you think, okay, there's some basis in fact there, the difference between open source and closed source software isn't about fact, it's about belief. It's about how you view the world. It's about your approach to life in general, because it's coming from a different philosophy, and that's where we need to get our heads around. I said I wouldn't give you a list of software, but there's a list just to get us started. The penguins there, you might wonder why, because that's the symbol for Linux, or Linux. I call it Linux because that's the way Linus Torvalds calls it, but it doesn't matter. There are hundreds and thousands of open source systems, and they're used by some of the biggest names in the world. Yahoo, Google, Facebook, they're all based on open source technology. But they all sit behind the scenes, in the back end. We hardly ever see them. We don't know that they're there. They certainly don't really impinge on us as learning professionals. But we're starting to get tools coming in over the last few years, particularly, where there are things that we can actually use. And I've listed some of those there. Things that we can use in real-life situations, and they're easy enough for us as learning professionals to take advantage of. There's almost always a closed source or proprietary counterpart to it. So we've got 2 different types of operating systems. 3. We've got Mac OS as well. We've got learning management systems, content and collaboration systems, sound editing, internet browsing. I don't know if I'm allowed to call it this, but mind mapping software. I know Tony's a bit particular about what we call it. In general, I would say most open source software is following the proprietary software. There's very few applications that are out there that are leading the way, that are being innovative, that are trying new ways of doing things. I would say that Moodle is a notable exception. Not in every way, but in particular ways, it does lead the pack. And you find other software providers are starting to take on some of the lessons learned there. But in general, open source software follows on. So how do you choose them? Start with rule 1. Is it actually going to do what you need it to do? So we've been through all the analysis. We know what we want. Let's go out and find out the software that will do it. So how do we find out? Start by going to the website. Look up the list of features. Download some specifications. Will that really tell you everything you need to know? No. Okay? So we get a sales rep in or a consultant. They can demonstrate it to us. Or we might read a case study of someone in a similar situation. Will that really tell you that it's going to work for us? No. Okay, so we try a demonstration site, or we try some demonstration software. We play with it a little bit. We're getting there. We're starting to get a feel that this might fit, or it won't. It's not a good fit at all. But I would say that the best way to test software is to try it with real people in a real situation. And that's one of the key features of open source software. It's scalable. You can start with very few people, try it in real situations at no or little cost. That's one of the key advantages, I would say. It's what you don't get with most proprietary software. You know, I've been in situations where we've been selling tools out to organisations that cost thousands of pounds a year, and we didn't give them any chance to really try it with maybe a small group of learners. That doesn't work. It wouldn't work for me as a buyer. I want to be able to test it with real people. What about working with our existing systems? This is just a quick overview of how our particular Moodle site is set up. You've got to think, when you're choosing software, picking up on what Gordon said, it's got to be able to integrate. Now, integration isn't just about getting data in and out. It's about, is it going to look like our systems, our existing systems? Are people going to be able to use it? Does it fit the culture in our organisation? Can it sit on our server platforms? You know, we're a Windows-based organisation. We use Windows Server. Can we cope with PHP server-based applications? Yes, but we need some more people to help us. When you're thinking about getting the data in and out, you've got to think, can we get it in the right format? Have we got the particular route that we need to get the data in? And it's not just big web applications like this. We're talking about simple things like FreeMind that I mentioned earlier, the mind mapping tool. One of the key questions on their website is, can I get a mind map from FreeMind to Mind Manager and back again? We've got to be able to make sure that the stuff we create, other people can use without necessarily having the same application. Do you want me to take you through this very briefly? Yes? Okay. Basically, we've got a Moodle site sitting on its own server. That's down in the bottom. All our HR systems are done using SAP, and that drives an Active Directory which holds a database of all the people in the company, 30,000 people, that contains their email address, a username and login for all hooked up systems, you know, profile type information. That Active Directory drives our Capita Desktop, which is our management information system tool. It also, there's a typo, that didn't translate, did it? Authenticatio down the bottom. It also drives our Moodle authentication process. So when people sign into the Moodle site, it looks back at the Active Directory and checks that they're the right person. What we're working on at the moment is extracting data out of the Moodle. And we're going to be creating a report, that's the dotted lines on the right, that takes gradebook information out of Moodle, combines it with HR information from SAP so that we know who's working for whom, because Moodle doesn't know anything about management structures, and puts that into a business warehouse, which then drives a reporting system that goes back into the manager's desktop. So that's it in a nutshell. So we need to be checking that our software is going to fit our organisation. It's going to integrate. That's one of the strengths of open source software. that if we want to make it fit, we can hack the code. Oh yeah, really? Who's going to do that then? You've got to think, is this software fittable? Is it written in a way that we can hack the code if we need to? Is it written in a modular way so we can add chunks into it quite easily? We've still got to work out who's actually going to do that, who's going to pay for it. It's not as easy as just hacking the code. So let's think about how much it's all going to cost. As I said earlier, open source software tends to be very scalable. You can start off very small, very low cost. But I would say that the more people that start to rely on that software, the more you should expect to pay. Don't expect it to be free, full stop. It's just common sense, really. If you've got thousands of people relying on something, you don't want it to break down, you want it to work well, you've got to pay for that. And it's not just about hardware. It's not just about getting people in to train. It's about marketing the benefits to people so that they take up that software. It's about getting the server infrastructure right. It's about getting the support right. It's about configuring it so it fits. It's about maintenance. All those factors that we need to consider when we're implementing any software. I read somewhere recently that only about 12-16% of a typical large-scale software deployment is actually in the license cost. The rest of it is actual implementation costs. So you've got to be thinking about that all the time. So we work out how much it's going to cost, rule 3. What's in common between these 4 different tools? We've got Joomla, content management and collaboration tool, got Moodle, learning management system, Articulate, rapid content creation, mind manager, mind mapping. The thing that's in common, I would say, is the quality and depth and level of the support that you get alongside those. With Articulate, you've got user forums, you've got superb documentation, you've got regular blogs that come out and say how to make best use of the software. MindJet, with Mind Manager, very similar situation. Forums, emails that come out every month saying, look, someone's doing this, have you tried doing this? Fantastic support. With Joomla and Moodle, again, you've got the forums, you've got very good documentation. You've also got third-party organisations that you can get paid for support from. This is one of the key things I always look for when I'm buying software, is how am I going to find out how to make it work when it doesn't work for me? Now, as I said, there's thousands of open source tools around. Some of them come with fantastic support like these. Some of them come with no support. Are you going to rely on that software? Probably not. One thing I always look at, again, particularly with open source software, because you can do, is look at the release schedule. How often are they putting out new updates to the software? How active are the forums? They give you an indication of whether you're going to get support, maintenance, upgrades, and so on, if you decide to take it on. So, will I be able to get help, is my rule 4. Where will I be able to go when it all goes horribly wrong? Money. Let's talk about money. Who pays for all this open source software anyway? Where does Firefox get its money from? Well, you see there, £56 million coming from Google to pay for Firefox development. Every time you use the little search box in Firefox, Google sends a chunk of money through. It's advertising. You've got to think, is this software going to be sustainable? Is it going to exist in a couple of years' time? Is it going to be developed further? Is it going to be maintained? Are security holes going to be sorted out? And all that costs money. You've got to understand the business model that that particular software company is working from. With proprietary software, it's easy. They sell you a license, you give them some money, they do some more development. very simple model. With open source software, there's probably about half a dozen different models by which they get money from. That didn't make sense, but let's carry on. So advertising is one model. Moodle, again, has a slightly different model. They don't use advertising, but they accept donations, but they also...
Donation.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. With Moodle, the model that works in the main for that is every time you buy something, a service like hosting or some consultancy or some extra development from a Moodle partner, they pay into the central Moodle pot. They pay a percentage of their takings. That seems to be a model that's working because the Moodle.com organisation, the commercial bit, is growing in the middle. They've just recruited more developers. So that's obviously a business model that's working. There are other business models. You need to make sure that you know how the company you're going to be working with, the software organisation you're going to be working with, is funded. Because otherwise, you've got no guarantee, or no 95% guarantee that that company is going to be around or that software is going to be around in a few years' time. There is a benefit to open source software in that if one organisation does decide to stop developing it, it's easy enough for someone else to pick it up and run with it. So you have got that, which you don't have with proprietary software. When Microsoft decides to stop supporting Windows XP, that's it. No one else is going to support it. So think about those sorts of things when you're choosing them. So is it going to be sustainable? And again, if it's something you're only trying out, you're only doing it with a small group of people, it's not such a big issue. As you start using it with more and more people, that becomes a big issue. So, just to finish off, it won't save the world, but it's an economic model that's based on generosity and collaboration. And it works. It's different, but it works. It isn't free. Sorry, it is free, but it will cost you something to invest in it. It won't free us from Microsoft or any other proprietary software, but it does give us a choice. And finally, it isn't necessarily inherently better coded, but the bigger projects tend to be better coded because the code is visible and anyone can go in and look at it. And the ones that aren't well coded don't get developed further. Just to finish off with, I would recommend that anyone that does get involved with open source software gets involved with the ecology of it. Now, whether that means buying services from someone to help you use it, whether it means making a donation, it might mean contributing to the support forums. So as you learn, you help other people learn. It might mean adding a bit to the documentation, tweaking a bit. Most of them are done on wikis. You can go in and add some stuff to the documentation. It might mean testing. It might mean producing more code. The more modular ones let you produce chunks of code very easily, and you can go in and you can add those into the ecology. So it's very easy with open source software to just take. And I would recommend, if you want the software to keep being developed, then you actually give something back in some way, and it doesn't have to be money. So, any questions?